for her. Thank you for her participation over the years. And with that, we've contacted the city manager's office and the mayor asking Lindsay to be promoted from alternate to a regular member. And we will, with that, we'll be looking for 2 more alternates. So with that, Bobby, call the roll, please.
Sue Ashton.
Here.
Heidi Bassford Kirkhoff.
Can unmute. Here.
Judy Ritchie. Deb Allison Osby. Lindsay Temple.
Okay, so Amy Vandenhoven is there, right there.
I don't have to call them.
Okay.
Okay, and Bobby, did you receive any citizens' comments?
I did not.
Okay, and we'll proceed with the approval of the November 3rd minutes. Are there any additions or corrections?
A couple of word changes, I think, will make it read better. Under the, it'd be on the second page of the minutes. It'd be under the B, fault prevention for aging population. The paragraph that starts with Stanley stated social isolation is a big problem. Go to the very middle of that paragraph. It talks about Mrs. Skolaski stated she thought the tagline for the rugs was great. And it's the decorative rugs, the vein of your existence. I think she meant bane, right? And then the other, I think, correction would be in the very last, second to last sentence of that of the minutes, where it talks about, let's see, they have 1 or 2 staff go in to help illuminate exposure. I think the limit is the word that Stanley was Mr. Stanley was talking about. So is that, you follow those 2? Okay, all right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
With those changes in place, do we have a motion to approve? And do we have a second? Thank you. Bobby, call the roll on that, please.
Sue Ashton. Keeper. Julie Davis. Ron Durkheim.
Yes.
Julie Maslowski.
She said aye.
Deb Allison Osby. And Lindsay Temple. All in favor to approve the minutes with the changes? Carried.
Okay. And then we will move on to our presentation. And Jean, would you like to introduce our speaker?
I believe we have Lynn Lawrenson, the city attorney. I just saw her face and now, oh, there she is. Hi, Lynn. And we also have Amy Vandenhoven, who will join us also.
Amy is our assistant city attorney, and she does the prosecution for our office, but also helps out with any other city matters. We also have a third attorney in our office, Dave Praska. He's not on the line today, but if you call our office, you will usually either get Amy, Dave, or myself. So we also have an administrative assistant who's not on. Her name is Kayla. So if you call our office, you will initially talk to Kayla. She'll get you to either Dave, Amy, or I. So hopefully you should have received, and it's not going to show up very good on here because it's going to be really tiny print, but a binder, there we go, that says Committee on Aging 2021. This binder is it's a template we put together for the boards and commissions with some of the most common issues that we've found over the years that you might face in regard to serving on a board or commission, or questions that you might have about serving on a board or commission. So it gives you some introductory materials that might answer some of your questions. For things that you have questions about beyond this, then you can talk to Jean or her staff, or you can call our office. But we'll kind of, Amy and I will switch off a little bit and start going through this, and Amy is actually going to start for you, so I will mute and let her go.
All right, good morning, everyone. As Lynn said, my name's Amy, and if you all have your binders, you don't have to follow along if you don't want to, but I'll kind of just be starting on page 4 and then going forward, and then Lynn will eventually pick up as I go. But to start off with, I'm going to be talking about open meetings and public records. As a governmental body on your committee, or part of a governmental body, you are governed by the Public Records Law and Open Meetings Law. When we think of open meetings, what that is going to require is that it is open to the public. When you're conducting a meeting of your body, that the citizens can view that publicly. So what we need to figure out is what's the meeting. Obviously, today, this is a formal meeting of your committee. This would apply, or this would be considered under that open meeting law. But there's other things that may qualify as an open meeting that you just need to be careful of. There's 2 prongs or 2 tests that you're going to be looking at, and it's what is the purpose test, why is everyone getting together, and the numbers test, how many people are getting together. And if the purpose is, if you're getting together to discuss information or matters that are coming before your committee, that would satisfy the purpose. And numbers, if half or more of you are meeting, or a number sufficient to determine a course of action. So if enough of you are getting together that you would kill the bill, not kill the bill, but kill any action, vote against it. And I apologize, I actually don't know how many members are on your committee, so I can't give Jean, how many are on the committee right now? Oh.
We have on the committee 8, 9.
Right now we have 8 with Sandy's.
8.
Sandy being gone, and then we have room for 2 alternates.
Well, I would say at least 4 is going to be a problem zone. Depending upon if it's a supermajority, it would be even less. So that would be kind of the number you're looking for your numbers test. So with that, if you are at ground round and enough of you are together, you're talking about matters relating to the committee, that would technically qualify as an open meeting. And now we're in a problem zone because you're at a restaurant discussing business that hasn't been noticed out to the public. We don't want to discourage you from talking. We just want to make sure that it's done in front of our citizens in a public way. So in that case, just avoid those situations. That being said, if 4 of you run into each other in ground round and you're not talking about business of the committee, that's okay. So again, it's purpose and numbers.
to add to that. We tell you, if you want to talk to one other person on your committee and, I have an idea, but I'm not sure if it's really a good idea or not. I want to bounce it off somebody. Bouncing it off one other member is not going to give you any problems. It's once you start going beyond one member, then start thinking about it, because not only could you talk to you're talking to one other member, but then that person could go and talk to someone else. So if you want to bounce it off somebody, pick your best friend on the committee and bounce it off them, and otherwise save it for the meeting, because that's why you have the meetings, is so you can discuss things. So sorry, Amy.
No problem. And then, so there's kind of like your traditional everyone's meeting in person type scenario where you think about that. But it's also, I just got a pop-up. I'm not sure if that's something I should be addressing. Oh, I think someone's just calling in. That's okay. But it also applies to other situations other than just like the formal sit down, everyone's in the same room. And if you look on page 5, some of those special considerations are laid out. First one is written correspondence. Generally, if you receive any written correspondence, it's probably not going to run afoul of the open meetings law, because that's generally a one-way communication. You're not having this dialogue back and forth, purpose numbers test. You're probably not going to run afoul of that. It's as you kind of work down this page, telephone calls, specifically telephone conference calls, and emails being the bigger one, that as soon as it's easy to have the numbers on an email, and as soon as you're doing reply all, more people are on it, you're talking about matters relating to the committee, you can get in trouble pretty quickly in an email situation at open meetings. So again, just make sure that we're having conversations regarding the committee in the meeting setting that's noticed out to the public. There's nothing wrong with getting an email, but you don't want to engage in this extensive back and forth where all of a sudden you have 4 members of the committee, you're talking about committee matters in email. Again, just keep it open in the public. The last one you see not the last one, the last one on page 5 at least, is walking quorums. Lynn kind of already had a nod to this. The problem with walking quorums is if I went to Lynn and said, hey, Lynn, what do you think about this? Here's how I'm going to vote on this. What do you think? And maybe we don't have an agreement in that one meeting. But then Lynn might go and talk to Dave and say, well, here's what Amy's going to do. Let's, what are you thinking? And so it's kind of this telephone, if you will, from one person to the next person to the next person, where even though all 4 of you or all 3 of you weren't meeting in one room, you've effectively created that by going person to person. So walking quorum, just be careful of it. As Lynn said, again, if you want to talk to one person, that's okay. But beyond that, we would advise that you, as best you can, keep it, and the committee keep it in the formal meetings, just so there's no concern.
Yeah, I have a question. 4 of us are on a work group that will be giving a report later in our meeting here, or summarizing kind of where we're at. And I had sent out to the other 3 the kind of a draft of where we're at as we're working toward a final document to present today. And so I sent it out and elicited their input toward a final version. So are we needing to notice that kind of activity? I mean, it just seems extra beyond what we would need to do. So your thoughts?
You're working with a balance there. This is Lynn. Sorry, I'm jumping in. But you're working in kind of a balance there between public records and open meetings. If you're working on a draft of a document, you know, you have the drafts, you're going to have the emails. It's, again, I think where Amy was talking about there, you're in more of the records kind of provisions. All of those records need to be kept. Those are all public records. They all need to be preserved. The question is somebody going to challenge you in regard to, you know, having a conversation by email? And this one, to be honest, to my knowledge, still no court, and I'm kind of surprised it hasn't happened, no courts address that issue. But it's come up in the instance more, not where you're working on documents so much, but where an issue comes up or somebody raises, we've had it with the council where, you know, a neighbor emails all the council members about some issue that's happening in the neighborhood. And the council members start replying all, or they start talking amongst themselves. Did you know about this? Did you know about this? And they're basically having a conversation. They're not really working on documents. They're not really doing that kind of thing. So it's kind of a balancing where you're working on documents, though, make sure that all of the documents and all of the emails are preserved. And to the extent that you're having those kind of conversations over email instead of just getting together and meeting, you probably should be getting together and meeting. Amy, I don't know if I'm kind of throwing not a lot of coffee at this morning. I've been trying to sip it on the side here, but that was my first blush on it. So maybe you have another thought too.
Nope, yeah, and that actually ties into public records, which we're just about to get to, Ron. So
okay, I was just going to comment. It would seem to be inappropriate for us, for this work group, to be kind of doing our activity during a meeting of our full committee. So you're saying it's possible we would need to have a separate meeting of our work group, notice that to the public that we're going to talk about our work group and our draft of our report for a future Committee on Aging meeting. And
yep, you can have subgroups for your, you know, the committees can create subcommittees, and then you're exactly right. You have to just notice it and do the same kinds of things, but that would be an acceptable way of doing that. So you could actually get together and talk about it. Again, it's weird times and it's hard to do right now. So it's a little different than maybe normal. But if you do a subgroup or a subcommittee and you do want to talk about issues, then you want to make sure probably Bobby Joe knows about it to do those notices or help you with those. So.
Okay, thank you.
The last thing then on page 6 regarding special considerations are just if the members of your committee want to attend another committee or board, this is something that you could just what we advise is you let your staff liaison know. They'll kind of keep a tally of how many people are going. If we ever get to the numbers threshold, all they need to do is notice out that you're attending. It's not a big deal. Better be safe than sorry. So again, that's just if a sufficient amount of you are considering attending another committee or board of the city. We just want to make sure that is noticed out. So if you go through all of that and determine that the open meeting law does apply, page 7 of the packet tells you what is required. And as Lynn kind of already addressed, it requires notice to the public. We try to give that notice at least 24 hours in advance. The preferred method, though, would be greater than 24 hours. Closed sessions must be noticed as well, although I do not think that your committee will be running up against closed sessions. The meeting needs to be accessible to the public. I know right now we're not meeting in person anymore, but City Hall is or I guess physically in person, but City Hall is accessible to the public. Citizen participation down there. The one thing we want to highlight is that open meetings do not require citizen participation. It only requires the right for the citizen to attend and observe. Many of our boards, commissions, and committees do allow citizen participation, but that is up to you and your committee. And then meetings, recording of votes. Staff will take care of that for you, but page 7 kind of highlights what is required when open meeting law applies. Which then gets us to public records, and we kind of talked about that a little bit in the context of Ron's question. The good news is that for the most part, staff is going to handle record requests, and they'll also handle maintaining records. The one thing I want to hit upon here are emails. Because emails are the one area that have a tendency to kind of be stored on your own personal device, perhaps. So the general rule with email is if you're getting an email from the city or a citizen, like it went through the city's email and you're getting it, that is saved on the city system. However, if you respond from your personal email to this citizen or whoever it may be, that's not necessarily saved on the city system. So what you need to do is some way make sure that that email is saved. An easy way to do it is to just CC or copy your staff member when you respond. Then it hits as soon as it's emailed to the staff, it's saved on the city system. You don't have to worry about it. If you don't want to do that, you need to come up with a system, whether it's a separate email address, a separate folder, somehow to make sure that those emails are being preserved. Does anyone have any questions on that point? Because that's kind of the one area of public record that there's a little bit of a burden on you to make sure that you're preserving those records. All right, I think everyone's good on that. So again, not much you have to worry about for public records beyond the email portion. So that brings us to ethics, which is on page 9. In general, there are 2 ethical restrictions that you need to be concerned about as a member of this committee, and it's whether or not you're receiving an item because of your position. So the accepting items, and then whether or not you are voting or participating in a decision in which you have a personal financial interest. The great news is on pages 10 through 15, the Wisconsin Ethics Commission put together some very user-friendly guidelines. Please use these as a resource if you ever have a question on ethics. But to just go through, first, accepting items. As a committee member, you can't accept an item of substantial value if it's being offered because of your position on the committee. Now, we recognize that you are all members of the community here. You have your own lives and a day-to-day. If you're having coffee with a friend and they're talking to you about the committee and they buy you a cup of coffee, is that because you're a member of the committee? No. Is that something of substantial value? Well, that's somewhat of a subjective test, but as you see, substantial means not nominal, insignificant, or trivial. Is the coffee going to influence your vote? So those are, in that situation, no. The friend wasn't giving it to you because you're on a committee, and 2, that's arguably not a substantial item. But beyond that, if someone is giving you an item because arguably you're a committee member, and now it starts increasing in value to you, that's where you need to be concerned. And then so that's the accepting items portion. The other area is whether or not you're participating in a decision in which you have a personal financial interest. That's the second portion on page 9. Again, you shouldn't vote in a matter in which you or your family or an associate organization has a substantial financial interest. There's some big words in there, but again, those are defined for you on page 9, the definition of substantial, and as well as associate organization on the bottom there. If at any point you have any questions about whether you have an ethical conflict, please contact our office. I wouldn't say we get these all that frequently, but it is not uncommon either to get a call from a board or committee member in regard to a specific conflict, and we can talk through the facts and the specific circumstance at that point. But again, the reference pages on pages 10 through 15 may also help you out. And with that, I think I will turn it back over to Lynn.
All right. So then starting on page 16, we have kind of the general rules of order for the boards and commissions. Many of you know Pam Ubrig, our city clerk. When Pam and I started, we had a cheat sheet of here's some of the rules, here's some of the Robert's Rules of Order that are the most common. And so this grew out of that. This is really not Robert's rules, it's Pam's and Lynn's rules of order. And we put it in what we hope is a little friendlier format than Robert's Rules of Order, which is about 900 pages long. So, you know, you can thank Pam and I for shortening that considerably for you. But and then the council has gone through and they've adopted these rules, these general rules of order for all the boards and commissions. So if you end up going off of the, Committee on Aging and you serve on the Parks Commission, you're going to be covered by the same set of rules, which is, a good thing in terms for us across our boards and commissions. So you can see they adopted the civility pledge. I will note, I'm not going to read through them all to you. I'm just going to make note of a couple. The general rule of decorum. Hopefully this never happens with your group, and you guys are so nice and friendly. I probably never will, but I have to worry about things like that. People can get out of control on occasion. If they do, we do have a general a rule that says you can't have somebody who comes in and personally attacks one of your members or the staff person and says, I don't like Jean, she's mean, she cuts in front of me in the grocery store line, and whatever. You can stop that person and say, you need to address the committee. Please don't make a personal attack upon a staff person or a committee member. Please address the issues. If somebody gets unruly or disorderly, the chair can rule them out of order. Obviously, if you get somebody who's really causing a disturbance, you need to get a hold of the police, because if you feel concerned or threatened at all, then don't worry about the rules, get some help. But these are for if you have somebody, we occasionally get somebody who drops a F-bomb or a swear word at a meeting, and this is the rule that says don't do that. So wanted to highlight that. The second one is boards and commissions can make their own rules pertaining to individuals addressing matters before the board. So that Amy had alluded to that earlier. You guys can set your rules. You can tell people, hey, you can only comment on agenda items, or we'll have a general public comment period like the council does, or like some of the other boards and commissions do. That is something that your committee can decide. You can also decide, the council has a 5-minute rule. I'll tell you I don't even know if they do this in high school anymore. When I was growing up way back in the day, they made us do 4-minute speeches for my English class. And 4 minutes was a freaking, I won't use the F-bomb, but it was an eternity. 5 minutes is an eternity if you are organized about what you have to say. So you can pick and choose that amount. I know a number of our committees have said 5 minutes, like the council, they thought was too long. They've gone to 3 minutes. And then you can always extend that for people. I think what the rule does is it tells people, get yourself organized so that you're concise and you know what you're going to say before you speak to us. So I just wanted to highlight that you guys have that ability to make those rules on your own. Attendance and excusal, there is a rule that you should give notice to the staff person at least 24 hours prior to the meeting. That's just because if we would fall below a quorum, it's just a courtesy to the staff and to the other members of your committee. Then when you get to page 18, you're going to hit a chart that's just not going to show up right on here, but it's the start of the chart. This is what Pam's and my chart started out from. It is the most common things you're going to run across. And then we tried to put them into categories. The first one is control of the agenda, withdrawing an item from the agenda, considering items out of the scheduled order, or suspending the rules. It will tell you, does that motion need a second? Is it debatable or amendable? And then what is the vote required? Most of them are going to be majority. Some are going to have super majorities. If it's a super majority, that's noted. When you have a fraction, two-thirds of a person can't vote, you always bump it up to the next complete person. So if you do your division and you come out with 4.2, that's 5 people. Taking up items of business, you have your original motions. I move to accept the report of the subcommittee. Second, is it debatable? Yes. Is it amendable? I move to amend it to note that on page 4 of the subcommittee report, it should actually be 10,000 instead of 100,000. And then what the vote is required. Limiting or extending or ending debate. Again, I don't know that this comes up very often, but if you would have somebody, and you can't do it to me now, that goes on and on and on and on and on, and you decide, I've kind of had enough of this. This is one area where we actually do things a little different than Robert's Rules of Order, for those of you who are familiar with Robert's Rules. But we allow any member of the committee to go, I call the question. So I'm not going to use me. I'm going to say Amy was going on. She's yak, 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 yak. She's just going in circles. We've had enough debate. I'll call the question. If there's no objection, if Amy just goes, okay, fine, and then there's no second, no debate, and no vote required. We just go right to the vote. That is different than Robert's Rules of Order, so I did want to highlight that one. If, however, I say enough already, I call the question and Amy says, oh no, I am not done yet. I object to that. I want to still debate. Then we would go right to a vote, and if 2/3 of us have had enough of Amy, we can shut her down. Otherwise, she gets to go along for a while longer until somebody else gets tired of her and moves to close it again. So hopefully, again, that doesn't happen, but it is there if you need it, and you have the book to remind yourself of how to do it.
Lynn?
Yeah.
I have a question. That's always like 2/3 of those present, not 2/3 of our 9-member committee, right?
Correct. The little note there's a footnote at the bottom of the page. Unless otherwise indicated, majorities or supermajority votes are counted as a percentage of the members present and voting. So thank you for asking that, because I was going to note that too. On page 19, there's just a little section on questions or concerns or other issues outside the substance of debate. I'll just note those. And they each have a little explanation, because, to be honest, even Pam and I could never remember which one was a point of order and which one was a point of information. And so we gave you a little note on that. Point of order: if the rules are not being observed. You decided you have a 3-minute rule on speaking. You have a speaker who's now gone 6 minutes. You can raise a point of order. the chair rules on the points of order. So if I'm the chair and someone raises a point of order, then I would make the initial rule, yes, it's been longer than 3 minutes, please wrap up your comments, or please let the next speaker go. A parliamentary inquiry, I want to make a motion, but I'm not sure how to do it. The chair can provide assistance, or the chair can ask staff to provide assistance, or another committee member can provide assistance. But if you have a question, I want to do something, but I'm not quite sure how to do it. That's what that is. Point of information is to ask a question. Someone made an amendment. Point of order, or point of information, sorry, point of information. I don't quite understand why you made the amendment. What does it mean? And have them explain it. Question of privilege, something or some person is interfering with the debate. It's too hot, it's too cold. Right now with the Zoom or the online meetings, I have interference on my line. I can't hear the speakers. All of those kind of things are a question of privilege. And again, all of these types of things generally go to the chair first to either respond to or to direct a response to. The chair can always direct it to staff. You know, there's static on the line. Jean, can you have everybody be muted for a few minutes so we can try and figure out who's got the static on the line? Or if it's too hot in the room, open a window, you know, whatever it is. And then any of those rulings by the chair can be appealed. And that's the final line on page 19. You can appeal I'll appeal the chair's decision. That does require a second, and it requires a majority vote to overrule the chair. Ending a meeting, you adjourn or recess, and then selection of officers, which you do every year, is also on there. So after the charts, you'll see a little bit of a written description that gives you a little more detail on some of the actions and motions. There is a note on abstentions or voting present. You don't count that as either a vote in favor or against. Just a note on that. Reconsideration, I don't know how often that would come up with this committee, but you can generally reconsider an action taken at the next meeting as long as something hasn't been done in reliance on it. So if you voted to enter into a contract and the next day the contract was signed, too bad, you cannot go back and reconsider that action. If you voted on a new program and the new program hasn't started yet, you could go back and reconsider that and make amendments to it if you wanted to. Pages 23 and 24 are just copies of that civility pledge information. And then 26 gets you to the city ordinances. The rules, minutes, notice, and compensation. Sorry, you don't. Hard news on the compensation, you don't get any. But those are the actual ordinances governing our rules. And then your Committee on Aging ordinance is reprinted on page 28 and 29. Oh, no, looks like just goes at the end of 28. Following that is some information. I know we've done training with this group before, but I think we've added a few things to our book to kind of maybe help you out, hopefully help you out, or just give you more paper so it looks more impressive. We added a section about the purpose and interrelationship of the councils, the boards and commissions, and other resources. This gives you a list of all the boards and commissions in the city and some really, really basic facts about them. But we find that a lot of our boards and commissions sometimes interact with each other, or maybe should interact with each other, want to interact with each other. You want to get input from another board or body. And this kind of tells you who they are and where to find them in the ordinances. Also, and I apologize, it gets stuck in a weird place in my book. But this micro-printed chart that comes along with it is actually the table of organization for the city of Oshkosh. You do definitely need reading glasses and maybe longer arms if you're like me to actually read it, but we did want to give you, it kind of gives you, here's how the city of Oshkosh is all put together. So again, it may just be something of interest to you, but it may be useful at some time. I think it is something that we did not include in your prior books, but might be of interest as you do deal with different items that come before you. And then finally, we had some just guidance for decision making. Generally, all of the items that come before your board or commission are going to be legislative determinations. And there's legislative and quasi-judicial. Quasi-judicial is just a fancy name saying it's dealing with a particular person or a particular property. Most of the things you do are not going to deal with a particular person or a particular property interest. So you're going to be in broader policy areas called legislative areas. In my world, that becomes important because legislative matters give you a lot more discretion. The rules are not as tight. When you are dealing with a particular person's rights or a particular property rights, you have to have due process, which means you have to give notice, you have to have an opportunity to be heard. We recommend you have actual findings in your minutes. So if you would ever find yourself in a situation where something like that comes up, get a hold of one of us over here and we can help you walk it through. But as we talked through, we couldn't even think of an example of when you're dealing with a person's, personal rights or that require due process. So, but if you come across something and need some help, that's what we're here for. So the guidance just gives you kind of a general decision making, and it's just again, this is just something new we've added to the book for all our boards and commissions, especially for new people, to give them an idea of how things come in front of you and what to do with them. The other one that comes before you is gift policy. And the Committee on Aging is responsible to review and make recommendations to the Common Council relative to certain gifts or donations. A lot of your gifts or donations, I'm going to guess, are probably going to fall under an exception to that council approval, because if we already have an established program or gifts under those programs or donations to that program don't require individual review. And I, for the life of me, can't think of a good example with this group, but Parks has their memorial tree program, so I'm going to use that as an example. We don't require council approval for every person who donates to the memorial tree or buys a memorial tree in the parks. That's a program that's been established. Some of the commemorative brick programs, we don't require a program for that. We have memorial benches in the parks. I'm sure you have similar things where you have programs set up, and I apologize because they're just not coming to my brain right away this morning, but along those same lines of the parks ones that I've mentioned, those do not need. But if you have somebody wants to build a second story onto the senior center, that is going to require council review and approval, along with probably Plan Commission and a few other people. But it's those bigger, new, think new, think big, think art. If you want to put a big statue out in the front lawn of the senior center, that something like that would require approval. So And then the last page is just a list of some additional resources. And again, I didn't list us as an additional resource or your staff, Jean and Bobby Joe and everyone there. But obviously, we are also additional resources for you. And, you know, don't be afraid to ask. Generally, I think, Jean, probably, do you like them to go through you first for anything other than ethical stuff? If you have an ethical question, please feel free to contact us directly, because we will keep that information confidential, particularly if it's a financial thing or something. We will, you know, talk to you about that confidentially. But I think, you know, if you have other questions or concerns, I think Jean usually have them kind of go through you first and then come to us. Is that correct? She's nodding.
Yes. They can do that. Bobby, Joe, or myself, they can go through and we can get. They
can usually track us down a little easier. We're pretty accessible, but sometimes we're not right there. And I know Jean knows how to hunt us down. So if there are any questions, we'd be happy to take those. Otherwise, Happy New Year. It's been nice to see all of you, and I look forward to seeing you in person again. All right. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Amy and Lynn. Okay, moving on under old business, age-friendly community project update, Bryn and Jean.
I'm going to let Bryn take this over. She's got a little presentation, PowerPoint. So, Ann, if you want to run that.
Okay, thank you.
Do I have the ability to share my screen, or is it best if, I'm not sure who the host is, maybe they show it? I'll try and share.
Bryn, I'm bringing it up right now.
Oh, okay. I'll stop sharing.
And then just tell me when you want to advance the slide.
You got it. And then real quick, because I was having audio problems with my laptop, and am I able to be heard pretty well by most of you? Quick head nod. Thank you. Okay, good. So I don't know exactly how long ago, but it's probably approaching a year's time. I had done some research, actually, that my predecessor, Mark Weisensell, had began, and he had invited at the time an AARP host to one of the meetings at the county for the focus of really explaining what age-friendly community is. And while a lot of the information in this presentation is geared toward collecting voices, ideas, and advocacy from those 50 years and older, age-friendly truly is something that spans generations. It's living in a community that is easy and happy for those people who are part of the community. So since that time when Mark had invited AARP to come and speak, I think there probably was some little bits of interest here and there. But then after I was attending several of the Committee on Aging meetings here with the city of Oshkosh, I saw that Jean, too, had very much been interested in moving this forward. So I approached her to see if we might be able to combine efforts, if you will. And we do have a small work group of folks. I believe there's about 5 or 6 of us. We didn't name those people in particular just because as I go through the presentation, you'll see the work group has all the possibility to change based on what we collect from the surveys as areas of interest and priority for those adults that are 50 years and older. So we didn't want to solidify any work group members at this time. But those of us that did come together did complete an application to AARP. I think that's on the next slide, Ann, if you want to go ahead and advance.
Having problems.
That's okay. I'll go on and read the next slide. And if I need to go back, I'll go back once you're able to maneuver the slide. This is a short presentation, so it won't be long. The second slide is exactly what I said about what our mission is. We came up with what is really a long sentence to hopefully concisely and consistently share what our work group is about and what our hope is that we achieve in the next 5 years with our comprehensive community plan. So the focus of the Oshkosh and surrounding area age-friendly community work group is to advance efforts to help people live easily and comfortably in their homes and their communities, and encourages older residents to take an active role and have their voices heard. With that, we needed to complete an application, come up with some information we felt as a community was pertinent and worthwhile, as far as review by AARP and whether or not they would be willing to accept us into their age-friendly network. We also had to get the endorsement, actually a proclamation, by an elected official. And we were fortunate that the mayor of Oshkosh was reviewing material that I had sent and was able to do that for us. So while we do have the proclamation for the city of Oshkosh, by the mayor, we do want to be clear that this is Oshkosh and surrounding areas. So a lot of the work and a lot of the voices and a lot of the collection of different ideas for services or supports that we might be able to do with this is not just going to be Oshkosh. We're going to do our best to make sure that we're reaching out to rural areas, Neenah and Menasha and others. But I do think that it's important to note that the bedrock of this and the foundation was with the city of Oshkosh and those a part of the Committee of Aging. Our next steps, after we've had now our first intro meeting with members of AARP for the state of Wisconsin, is to take their survey and make it accessible to all of those populations that we wish to reach out to. And we understand that part of making sure we have good feedback, maybe not feedback, a good number of people who respond to the survey is that we have to go out and kind of rally the troops and beat the drum, if you will. So we really want to make sure that we're out there getting presentations, sharing information about this, so that if folks come across the survey, whether it be in paper form or whether they're getting a link shared with them through an electronic survey, they have understanding of what it is, they have confidence that it's not a scam, that it's something that they've heard of, that it's something that they're familiar with, and it's something that we would value them to complete and get their feedback from. As I said, the survey will be made available in paper form. Tentatively, we're now thinking about a March timeline that's still a little flexible based on so much of what's happened with COVID. And hopefully, yes, this month you will see in local newspapers from AARP a press release. They were going to do that back at the end of last year, but we had asked if we could postpone that press release because, there was a variety of reasons. We had a large presidential election coming up, and then it was right before the holidays. Of course, we had COVID, so there wasn't the opportunity to have presentations in person at all. So we thought that maybe if we could just give it a couple months, things might change and we might actually get some of the awareness that we were hoping for. So the focus areas of the survey that will be coming out are based loosely on the 8 domains of livability. So they don't read word for word. If you were to Google AARP's 8 domains of livability, the survey doesn't specifically ask those 8 domains, which I think is helpful because what they're doing is they're in an attempt trying to use common language to make sure that they're getting the answers to the questions that they want. We are only one of 6 different communities that have been accepted to the national and global AARP age-friendly network. So this has been used previous, and it sounds successful. So we'll be able to consistently gather the same information that the previous age-friendly work groups have. The areas are your home and community, homes, buildings, and spaces, transportation, health and wellness, social participation, inclusion, and education opportunities, volunteering and civic engagement, job opportunities, community information, and demographics. So again, I think that we want a very high response rate because these topic areas hit on, I think, what is quality of life for, if not all of us, almost all of us. And if we are able to tap into some good work that is already existing, for example, we already have a county aging plan established with GWAR that we use Title III dollars for, which are federal dollars for older adult programming. If we already have different volunteer programs that exist and are active, whether it's with United Way or through AdvoCap as just some examples, what we will find is that we need to focus on some of those areas of improvement, but maybe we have some of these programs, but we just need to do a better job of connecting people with, especially at this time. So I do think we're going to learn a lot from this survey. And we have next slide. This is the program cycle. We have 1 to 2 years to solicit that feedback. With that feedback, create a plan, and this is why the work group has the potential to change. So if transportation is identified as, the #1 priority, that would probably mean we need to pull in quite a few people from Transit Authority in some respect, whether it's the City of Oshkosh and Go Transit or Fox Valley Transit or what have you, Valley Transit. And based on what we come up with as community comprehensive goals, that will then develop our plan. The plan then begins action in year 3, and then through year 3, 4, and 5, we have to keep tabs on how well we're doing. So the metrics of what we've identified as a goal, how we're doing on those goals as far as achieving or not achieving, and possibly why, and give that information routinely, although I don't yet know the timeline, to AARP. The purpose is because they obviously want to gauge our success, but also if they can offer assistance along the way, they want to be able to do that. And connecting us with other age-friendly communities is part of why this is so important. If we're, having a stalemate in some area despite our best work and having the right people at the table, are we able to connect with some of those other age-friendly communities who've had success? And if so, how can we possibly capitalize on their success and not have to reinvent the wheel? This also allows us, again, I think I mentioned this, but as we are now a part of the national and global age-friendly network, we take this action plan and submit it to AARP so that they're able to actually recommend Oshkosh and surrounding areas to the World Health Organization as an age-friendly community. So with that, I would imagine comes, again, greater access to ideas, support to help us propel any movement that we have in the plan. And step 4, which I've already kind of touched on, is those years 3, 4, and 5, we're going to be taking action. And if we have different community initiatives that can be taken on by other subgroups, our work may very well have come to an end. And of course, that would be, published and captured, and we would make that known as far as what we've been able to accomplish, and make sure that we're accessible to other community agencies who might need to pull on us in the future. Or if we've identified more long-term plans or initiatives that really would require this age-friendly work group to still meet and still be that cornerstone of action, We would then decide that at about year 5 and determine whether or not we'd reapply to be a part of the age-friendly network. So that was a lot in a very few short slides, but I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any, and I'm sure that Jean or Heidi also would be willing to share any information that they have from the work group. Or Ann, sorry, Ann. Okay, if there's no questions, I will make sure that my phone is muted so you guys can continue.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Bryn. That was very good. Jean, quick question for you. Are we allowed beyond our normal time?
No, Judy, I think we're going to have to try to wrap it up.
That's what I was asking.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay. So looking at the time that we have right now,
Time, Anna.
and the amount of,
That's okay.
and the amount of business that we had to take, or reports that we have to take care of, I would ask for a motion to suspend the rest of the meeting and put these other items on the agenda for next month. Does anyone want to make a motion or discussion?
We put the other business on for next month.
Do we have a second?
I'll second. This is Julie Maslowski.
Okay, so we have a motion with a second. Bobby, would you call the roll?
Heidi Bassford Kirkhoff. Julie Kiefer.
Yes.
Susan Maslowski.
Yes.
Judy Ritchie.
Yes.
Carried to suspend other business till next month's meeting.
Okay, with that, I'll call for an adjournment. Our next meeting will be February 2nd, and at this point, we don't have a specific speaker. We're waiting on some responses. So again, calling for a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
I'll second. Julie Kiefer.
And in a second, Bobby, call the roll, please.
Heidi Bassford Kirkhoff. Julie Kiefer.
Yes.
Ron Durkop. Julie Maslowski.
Yes.
Judy Ritchie. Lindsay Temple. Sorry. Motion to adjourn at 9:04. Carried.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.